Rebecca is coming to Wuthering Waves soon, and she is going to be available for every single player because she is going to be given out for free. But the question is Rebecca worth building? That's what I'm going to be talking about in today's video by discussing her biggest pros and cons. One of the biggest things that Rebecca has going for her is that there's quite a few characters that are able to use her effectively. This is because the core of Rebecca's kit is being a sub DPS who is able to buff heavy attacks. And as you probably know, we have plenty of heavy attack DPS characters in the game already, mainly being Jian, Augusta, and Phoebe, and Lucy is also going to be joining this roster, which means that Rebecca has 4 teams that she is going to be viable in. What I do want to point out is the fact that she's not going to be best in slot in all of these teams. I think she's going to be best in slot with Lucy for sure, and then maybe there's a chance she's best in slot with Phoebe. However, with Jian and Augusta, I don't think she's going to be the best option. However, you still can use Rebecca with Jian and Augusta, mainly if you do not have Yuno and for some reason you don't want to build Mortefi. And even if you do have a built Mortefi, I think there's a good chance that Rebecca is going to be stronger than him. So Rebecca would still be worth building in the event that either you do not have Yuno, or for efficiency in End State Matrix, because if you're able to run Yuno as a DPS, and then run Rebecca with Augusta, that's still pretty efficient with your characters. You could also just run Yuno with Augusta, and then run Jian with Rebecca, which means that ultimately, even for the characters that she isn't best in slot for, there's still going to be some sort of use case that you have in order to use Rebecca with these characters. With Lucy, she's obviously going to be the best in slot because she's literally designed to be good with Lucy, so that one is basically guaranteed. Phoebe has never really had a straight up solid buffer, so anyone who has high personal damage and good general stat buffs like attack percent is going to be good in a Phoebe DPS team. Rebecca is also going to have one of the largest damage profiles of any sub DPS in the game. Currently, the highest damage profiles from sub DPSs are coming from Yuno and Brand. Third place is Lene within a Toon Rupture team specifically, and then Rebecca claims the 4th spot. This is because she has quite a lot of things in common with Lene, with the main one being the fact that just like Lene, she also has access to a Toon Break based mechanic. Lucy and Rebecca's hack mechanic is basically just a reskin version of Toon Rupture, which means that it also inherits all of Toon Rupture's strengths. For example, the damage against bosses is heavily increased compared to when you look at elites or regular enemies. Additionally, it's also going to allow Rebecca to do damage even when she's not on the field. Sure, it's not going to be consistent, so it's not going to be very strong for Whimpering Wastes, but she's still contributing even when she's not on the field. Obviously, I don't need to tell you that when a character does damage, this is good for the team. The more damage a character does, the better, obviously. So I don't need to go into detail on why Rebecca having good damage output is a beneficial thing. However, I do think it's worth noting that the main scenario in which this would be useful, being Whimpering Wastes, Rebecca is heavily hampered. This is because her ultimate works similarly to Augusta. It stops time while it's active, which means if you get unlucky with the timing, enemies could just completely stop respawning in the middle of your Rebecca's ultimate, which would definitely be a shame. The ultimate also looks to be incredibly single target, which means a lot of Rebecca's damage is simply going into nowhere. So while Rebecca does have good damage output, one of the main scenarios where you'd want to use it isn't going to be that good for her. And then the final pro is that, simply put, Rebecca is a pistol character. Now, of course, it's not just that she's a pistol character, it's that she has access to one of the best standard weapons in the game, which is Static Mist. Static Mist, as we all know at this point, is one of the best standard banner weapons because not only does it have a high base attack paired with crit rate, it also has one of the best passives. Whenever Rebecca uses her outro skill, whoever gets the intro skill from Rebecca is going to have their attack increased by 10%. Now obviously this passive doesn't sound like a lot, but this weapon single-handedly makes it so the difference between Lene's signature weapon and Static Mist is less than 6% within most team comps. Rebecca's signature weapon gives a total of 24% attack, and while it's obviously more geared towards Rebecca's personal damage, a sub DPS should always prioritize buffing their main DPS. So ultimately, when you look at the signature weapon, you want to compare how the buff is next to Static Mist, and the difference is 14% attack, which really is not a lot. Rebecca is already free, so Static Mist being one of her best weapon options, or in fact the second best weapon option, is very nice for her. So ultimately, Rebecca is looking to be one of the most free-to-play friendly units we've had in quite a while. However, as with every single character in the game, it's not always going to be sunny in paradise, and Rebecca is no exception, because she too has her flaws. The first one, and the most major one in my opinion, is that without a double intro skill rotation, this character's rotation gets long. And when I say long, trust me, I mean very long. We're looking at a rotation of almost 10 seconds if you use only one intro skill on her. This is because Rebecca is primarily bottlenecked by her own forte gauge. Her forte gauge generates mainly when she uses intro skills, and basic attacks. However, each one of these has a problem. Her basic attacks generate a very small amount of forte, her intro skills are, well, locked to concerto energy, and her normal skills are very long. This means that Rebecca's best source of forte is going to be her intro skill, and with 2 intro skills she's definitely going to be quite the menace when it comes to her rotation speed. However, this is going to be very hard to implement within a team rotation. Obviously, Rebecca is unable to use an intro skill from her own outro skill, which means both your main DPS and your supports are going to need to use their outro skill on Rebecca. This is a bit problematic because one of the main characters that she wants to play with is Mornia. And while Mornia does have rotations that don't require her intro skill, they are vastly slower and are unable to take advantage of a multiple refined Discord, which means that you are going to be losing a lot of time to that. So either you lose a lot of time on Rebecca herself by only doing one intro into her, or you lose a ton of time on your Mornia because you don't have an intro skill to use on her. And then the second negative is that Rebecca's outro skill can only be used to its fullest potential when you're playing her with Lucy. This is not because of some kind of complicated gameplay thing. It's not because she has a mechanic that only Lucy is able to take advantage of. No, it's just straight up in the description for the outro skill. Her outro skill gives 15% damage amplification, and then gives a scaling heavy attack damage amplification buff every 0.5 seconds. However, with Lucy, this buff is instantly maxed out. Normally, it takes the full 14 seconds to max it out, at which point the outro skill is going to expire. However, because Lucy is able to just instantly get the maximum amount of stacks, she's the only one who's able to really utilize that 35% to its fullest potential. And while this doesn't exactly ruin Rebecca's synergy with other characters like Augusta, in fact, the backloaded nature of her outro skill isn't even that bad for Augusta because she herself is also backloaded, it's still just really unfortunate to see that a character is being restricted simply by just putting a different character's name into their kit, especially since Rebecca is going to be given out for free. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think of Rebecca down in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, you should join my Discord server, which is linked in the description below. But that'll be all from me. Peace.